question for Director Gabbard. A spokesperson for former President Obama said in a statement earlier this week, quote, "Nothing in the documents issued last week undercuts the widely accepted conclusion that Russia worked to influence the 2016 election, but did not successfully manipulate any votes." How do you respond to critics like former President Obama and also others on the Hill who say that the administration is conflating apples and oranges here, conflating allegations of actual hacking of voter machines and allegations of interference generally?
I think it's a disservice to the American people that former President Obama's office and others who are criticizing the transparency that is being delivered by releasing these documents. They are doing a disservice to the American people and trying to deflect away from their culpability in what is a historic scandal and negative action towards the American people and our democratic republic. The answer to that statement can very clearly be found throughout all of the documents that we have released. Again, showing that Russia has took action to try to sow discord in the election, but showed no preference for or against any singular candidate.
You've long been an opponent of weaponization in government. How do you respond to criticism that referring Obama administration officials and even potentially the former president is just more weaponization and this is a potential race to the bottom?
I think that's a very disrespectful attack on the American people who deserve the truth. They deserve to have faith and trust in the integrity of our democratic republic, which has been undermined by President Obama through his direction of this manufactured fake intelligence document, knowing that it was filled with lies and knowing that it would and could then be used for all of the actions that came after.
Carolyn, and I would just add, there needs to be accountability for that weaponization, Phil, that we've seen. And no one has been a victim of the weaponized government more than President Trump, not just because of this political scandal. You all recall his house was raided. So I think, it's very disingenuous for people to say, how dare they speak of former President Obama about this based on evidence and based on intelligence when the former president of the United States, Donald Trump's home was raided, when he was forced to sit in a Manhattan courtroom and many other courtrooms across the country for crimes he never committed, when he was impeached and indicted, and the entire country witnessed that. That's the weaponization of justice. Now the president is back because the American people see the truth. Nearly 80 million Americans reelected him back to this office, and he believes that we need to have justice and accountability. And I think the nearly 80 million Americans who reelected him agree with that. Caitlin.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody, and I appreciate you being here. It's great to be here. It's great to talk to some of the incredible people that we have, both at the local level, the Texas state level, and also, of course, our federal border patrol, who are doing so many good things to keep us safe. And I have some bad news and some good news. And the bad news is that because of what Joe Biden did at the southern border for 4 years, we had record increases in migrant crime, in fentanyl deaths, and in just floods and floods of people who shouldn't be in our country who came into the United States of America. We also have a number of ways in which the cartels became more advanced, better war fighters, because Joe Biden opened up the American southern border and allowed the cartels to turn it into their playground. Now, that's the bad news. The good news is, as President Trump said last night at the State of the Union, it turns out we didn't need new laws. We didn't need fancy legislation. We just needed a new president of the United States, and thank God that's exactly what we have. And I will say that the most heartening message that I take away from my visit here at the Texas border is the number of Border Patrol agents who have come up to me and said thank you, or said because of this, we've cut the number of border crossings from 1,500 a day to 30 a day. Or the people who have come up and said we've seen a reduction, an 85% of the number of people who are dying at the American southern border. And every single day that we continue to keep this border safe, that means less migrant crime, that means less fentanyl coming into our communities, that means more safety and security for the people of the United States of America. And of course, we know the border problem, the border crisis under Biden's administration was a national crisis, but it acutely affected the communities right here. And I've already heard heartbreaking stories of people who are still picking up the pieces businesses, local mayors who are still dealing with the budgetary consequences of what the Joe Biden administration allowed to happen at the American southern border. And that, too, is something that President Trump is going to help address, help fix, and help solve. Now, I wanted to bring Secretary Hegseth and Director Gabbard at DNI down here because, one, I obviously enjoy their company, and it's good to have them down here with me looking around today. But unfortunately, we know that because of what's happened, the border crisis has become a matter of national intelligence, and it's also become something that requires the Department of Defense to engage with. I was talking with Paul Perez earlier. The drone technology that the cartels are using requires, unfortunately, a military response and military support. So it was important for Secretary Hegseth to see what's going on because we know that the millions and millions of people who were let in over the last 4 years, many of them are connected to foreign terrorists. It's important for our leader of national intelligence to get a sense of what's here on the ground. So before we take questions from the press, and all of us are willing to take questions, I want to give Secretary Hegseth and then Director Gabbard an opportunity to say a few words themselves. Mr. Secretary.
Well, Mr. Vice President, thank you very much for inviting us. It's great to be here with you, with the director, with our fellow friends in civilian clothes and in other shades of green. This is a demonstration of a true partnership on the southern border. As President Trump has made clear on the campaign trail and from day one and last night, border security is national security. And from the Defense Department, we've watched for a couple of decades other people's borders being secured while ours was open for an invasion of drugs and of violence and of chaos for American communities. That stops under President Trump. And the Defense Department has assets that we can bring to bear, not just troops, not just surveillance, not just equipment, but actual planning and capabilities that enhance what Border Patrol is already doing, which is why it's been incredible to hear from our partners about what we've been able to allow them to do, facilitate them, and we've seen it in the numbers. 98% drop in crossings on the southern border. We're not yet at 100% operational control, but we are on our way because that is the mandate that the president has given us. So more resources are coming to this border. We are dedicated to securing it. That's the reason for our trip and our partnership. And I want to thank all the men and women who've been doing it recently in uniform, who have been doing it a long time right here, have dedicated their lives to securing the American people. And at the Defense Department, we are committed to continuing to being a big part of it. So, Mr. Vice President, thanks for having us.
Absolutely, man.
Appreciate
Thank you. Great. Now, Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President, for your leadership in bringing the country's attention to what has been happening here at the border and the significant change that has already occurred under the short time that President Trump has been in office. Really, what you're seeing here today and what you'll continue to see is a unified effort across President Trump's national security team, the Department of Homeland Security, towards our mission, which is to ensure a safe, free, and prosperous society for Americans. As Director of National Intelligence, there are a number of areas where we are focused. The President talked about in his speech, over 21 million people have come across our borders illegally under Joe Biden's administration. There are many of them that we don't know who they are. They have not been vetted. We don't know where they are. I'll give you one quick example of one of the problems that we are getting after. From Central Asia, there were over 4,000 people who came across our borders using an ISIS-affiliated network. Our National Counterterrorism Center went through and identified those individuals. There were hundreds of them who were either known terrorists or associated with known terrorists. That information was provided to the Biden administration. You may remember in some of the news, a little over 100 of those people were arrested in 2024. Of those who were arrested, only 8 were either deported or remained in custody. Only 8. The rest of them were released back into our country. Where are they? What are they doing? What may they be plotting? This is just the beginning. There are many, many areas that we need to stay very focused on, working with the Department of Homeland Security, working with the FBI to ensure that we're keeping the American people safe. Our Counterterrorism Center is working on making sure that we have that single source for vetting so that we can figure out who is actually in our country and identify those who pose a threat and get them removed. The president's designation of the cartels as foreign terrorist organizations falls directly into this, especially as we're seeing some of the tactics that these cartels are using reflect some of the tactics that we've seen used by Islamist terrorists in countries that many of us have served in overseas. Our mission is very clear. Our objective is to keep the American people safe. I'm grateful to be a part of this team that President Trump has assembled to accomplish that mission. Thank you.
Great. So before I take questions, let me just say two final things. First of all, the reason why we've seen, as Pete said, a 98% reduction of border crossings, the reason why this particular site has gone from over 1,500 crossings per day to 30 crossings per day is because President Trump has empowered and, in fact, demanded that his whole government take the task of border control seriously. And that's exactly what we're doing. And of course, and this leads me to my final point before we take questions, it is impossible to do without the men and women on the ground who are actually doing the hard work. They just want to be empowered to do their jobs. President Trump has made that possible. So from the bottom of my heart and for a grateful nation, to every person I've met here today, thank you for working hard on the American people's business. It's been an honor to be with you. It's been an honor to see what you do, and we're going to keep on supporting you over the next 4 years. Congressman Gonzalez, thank you for being here, and thank you for your leadership. And now we'll take some questions from reporters. Sir.
So, as you guys have been exemplifying for today that border crossings are down, a lot of attention has been turned to the interior since obviously there's been a lot of illegal immigrants. What is, in your opinion, the biggest obstacle to actually carrying out President Trump's mass deportations? Even though, yes, like apprehensions and arrests and deportations have gone up in his first month, but a lot of people are expecting a bigger capacity for deportation. So what's the biggest hurdle?
So let me say a few things about that. So first of all, Rome wasn't built in a day. And we have seen pretty significant increases in deportations and apprehensions and arrests. But we have to remember that President Biden gutted the entire immigration enforcement regime of this country. We are trying to rebuild so that we actually empower people to enforce the immigration laws of the American people. It is common sense. It's what the American people want us to do. There are a couple of other things that we're working on. And I don't want to get ahead of any public announcements, but one of the ways that we want to make sure that we're enforcing our border is that we make it easier for people who are here illegally to go back home of their own accord. We don't want to have to go around and arrest every person, but we will enforce the American people's immigration laws. If you're here illegally, the message from our administration is you should go back home, and if you want to come to the United States, apply through the proper channels. That's an important thing that we're doing. And the final thing is this costs money. One of the most important parts of the president's reconciliation priorities is, of course, tax reform on the one hand, and on the other hand, making sure that we get proper resources so that we can pay for the flights, and we can pay for the detention centers, and we can pay for all the components necessary to ensure that we're re-migrating illegal immigrants back to their country of origin. I guarantee it is a part of the president's priorities. We'll keep on working on it. We've made a lot of progress, but we're going to keep on working on it over the remainder of the president's term. Yeah, go ahead.
Mr. Vice President, I want to ask you about border wall and tariffs. But first on the border wall, how do you and the president...
Could you say your outlet, by the way, when you guys ask questions?
Yeah, Reagan Reese, Daily Caller.
Thank you.
How do you and the president define success this term with the border wall, and how much of the southern border wall needs to be walled off before Trump leaves office?
Well, look, I think the president's hope is that by the end of the term, we build the entire border wall. And of course, that's the physical structure of the border wall itself. But we even heard today, there are so many good technological tools, so many great artificial intelligence enabled technologies that allow us, for example, a camera, not a person, but a camera picks up somebody 2 miles away who's about to come across the southern border. Maybe it's livestock, right? Maybe it's a critter in the desert. Maybe it's a human being with a weapon on their back. We're using artificial intelligence to make us better at the job of border enforcement, but we've got to make sure that technology is deployed across the entire American southern border. We're going to do it as much as we can, as broadly as we can, because that's how we're going to protect the American people's security. Yeah, go ahead.
Last time they were paused because they deployed 10,000 troops to the border. What can they do this time to make the tariffs go away?
Well, what the president has said is we need a sustained commitment from the government of Mexico to take the job of border security seriously. Fentanyl is the single largest cause of death among young Americans, and we know that a substantial portion of it is, the precursors are made in China. They come to Mexico, they're manufactured in Mexico and brought across the border by the Mexican drug cartels. We want to see fewer Americans dying of these terrible fentanyl overdoses when we're going to apply as much leverage as possible to the Mexican government as possible. In some ways, look, the president obviously cares deeply about the American people. He serves the American people first. I actually think he's doing a huge favor to the people of Mexico, because if they don't get control of these cartels, the people of Mexico are going to wake up in a narco state where the cartels have more power than their own government. President Trump is trying to help. The Mexican government needs to take this issue of immigration enforcement seriously. In the back, yeah.
Mr. Vice President, Ali Bradley, News Nation. So since the designation of the cartels as terrorists, does that give the United States the green light to go into Mexico and to strike them there? I mean, right now, obviously, they've struck in the Houthis in Yemen. So why not, when we've seen cross-border violence, go after them in Mexico? And then my second question is about a designation. I'll follow up on these.
Go ahead and ask the second question.
Why isn't the Juarez/La Línea cartel designated when it's in one of the most deadliest places on the planet? Juarez has been designated as one of the deadliest cities. It's right across from El Paso. We've talked to community leaders. They say, we know Juarez cartel's operating in the U.S., and so are their affiliates. We don't even want to talk about it out loud, though, because then we'll put a target on our back. They're scared. Border Patrol even thought they were designated, but they're not. The State Department didn't tell me why.
So on that, we're looking at additional organizations. Obviously, this is the determination of whether to determine a particular organization, a terrorist organization, is something that we consult with our leaders of the Department of Defense. We also consult with our friends in other governments. We maintain the optionality to designate further organizations, terrorist organizations, if we feel that we need to in order to protect the American people. And I think President Trump has made it very clear he's not going to be shy about designating some of these cartel organizations as terrorists if he thinks he has to protect the American people. Your first question was about
American forces to strike.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So, look, I'm not going to make any announcements about any invasions of Mexico here today. The president has a megaphone, and of course, he'll speak to these issues as he feels necessary. But what designating cartel organizations allows us to do is deploy the full resources of the United States military to engage in serious border enforcement. Of course, the president is going to make the determination about how we deploy those forces. But our hope is that Mexico takes this job seriously. We don't want to have negative relationships with the Mexican government. We want the Mexican government to help itself, but also in the process to help the American people by taking these organizations seriously. It's going to destabilize the entire country of Mexico, the entire government, if they don't take it more seriously. We're hopeful that they will. And if they don't, then of course, we'll figure out what to do from there.
So, you just mentioned something about invasion of Mexico. Is there any talk or any thoughts about actually U.S. military forces going into Mexico?
No. Next question.
On tariffs, are any other industries other than automotive reaching out to you guys to carve out special deals? And did the automotive industry know this was coming before today?
Well, a number of industries have reached out to us to ask us for exceptions to the tariffs, but I think the president's been very clear here that he wants the tariffs to apply broadly. He doesn't want to have 500 different industries getting 500 different carve-outs, and the way to avoid application of the tariffs is to have your factory and have your facility in the United States of America. That is the way. Invest in America. That is how you will avoid being penalized by these tariffs. Sir.
Vice President, KSAT 12, John Paul Barajas. You've been talking about the improvements that your administration has done here with the crossings. Can you talk about the decline prior to President Trump taking office under the Biden administration?
Well, I think like so many Americans, apparently members of the Mexican drug cartel figured out in November and December after the election that Joe Biden was asleep at the wheel and they had to be dealing with the then president-elect and now president. if you look at what drove the declines before the inauguration, people will tell you they knew that Donald Trump was coming back into office. They knew he was going to take border enforcement seriously. And so they were already getting ahead of actually cutting down those illegal crossing numbers. We saw that from the Mexican government, of course, because we were threatening some economic sanctions against them. But we also saw it from the cartels themselves. And even today, because, of course, it doesn't, it takes a little time to get from the deepest parts of Central America to the American southern border. What we often find is that there are massive numbers of illegal immigrants who have already started to make the trek and have decided, you know what, because Donald Trump's president, we're going to go back home. We heard today about a Honduran group of migrants who decided they're just going to go back home because they recognize that under Donald Trump's leadership, we take border enforcement seriously. Thank you all. Take care.
Thank you all for coming. Very good. She's got my support 110%. One of the most important positions that President Trump's going to have under him in terms of getting our country back straight. And there's 4 or 5 people that I've met with that she'll be working with. It's a good time to know that we're going to have people that's actually going to be for the United States of America and the citizens of America. One thing that we discussed was trust. Trust is what we have to have in this country where our people, the people that pay the taxes, the citizens of this country can understand we trust the people that's running the United States of America, especially our intel agency. So I'm 100% for Tulsi. She's going to be great and look forward to her taking over in the very near future and going from there, and we're going to work with her very hard.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator.
Okay, thank you.
Great to see you. Thank you for your time and for your support. As we talked about, there are a number of serious national security threats that our country faces, and it's important that we all stand together to put the interests of the safety, security, and freedom of the American people first. So I'm grateful for your support and looking forward to continuing to meet with your colleagues over the next week or two.
Are you planning on meeting with further Democrats beyond, obviously, Senator Warner over the next week or two as well?
Yes. We've extended invitations to, obviously, all the Democrats on the committee and others not on the committee, and I look forward to meeting with all who choose to accept the invite.
When's the last time you spoke to the president-elect, and what has he told you about his priorities that are confirmed as far as regaining that trust, of the intel community specifically?
I spoke to him yesterday, and he has made very clear, both himself as well as through his national security advisor and others, his priorities. Right now I'm focused on continuing to meet with senators, address any questions or concerns that they have, and talk about the interests of our country and how we look forward to being able to work together.
Have any Democrats indicated they're going to support you?
I won't speak for any senators.
Have they told you that?
I won't speak for any senators. I will allow them to make their own statements on their own account.
Have you heard concerns about experience within the intel sphere itself? We've heard concerns, like that from other senators. I'm just wondering if you've heard those things with your meetings from Democrats or others.
I don't want to disclose the contents of our conversations. My background on the Armed Services Committee and the Foreign Affairs Committees in Congress over 8 years, service in the military now for over 22 years, gives me a lot of the insight necessary to be able to go in and understand the serious threats we face and the essential function of our intelligence community to restore that trust and to get after ensuring the safety, security, and freedom of the American people.
Thank you.
Thank you. Over the line, who have criticized your stances on Russia.
Thank you, guys.
Ms. Gabbard, do you have any
waiting? I just want to start by saying it's great to be here to meet with some of my former colleagues, like Senator Langford, and I'm looking forward to continuing to engage with the senators on the committee and also in the broader Senate as we go through this process.
How would you respond to some of your fellow members describing you as a national security risk?
I want to address the issue that's in the headlines right now. I stand in full support and wholeheartedly agree with the statements that President Trump has made over these last few days with regards to the developments in Syria. My own views and experiences have been shaped by my multiple deployments and seeing firsthand the cost of war and the threat of Islamist terrorism. It's one of the many reasons why I appreciate President Trump's leadership and his election, where he is fully committed, as he has said over and over, to bringing about an end to wars, demonstrating peace through strength, and putting the national security interests and the safety, security, and freedom of the American people first and foremost.
What's your relationship with Assad? What about your relationship with Assad?
Yields, Mr. Gomez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I want to make a few things clear before we move on to other questions regarding the Signal chat. Director Gabbard, yesterday before the Senate Intelligence Committee, specifically when answering Senator Kelly, you repeatedly said you did not recall any discussion in the Houthi PC small group discussing operational details, strike targets, the type of vehicles and military units involved, or the timing and order of strikes. Do you stand by your testimony from yesterday that you do not recall any of the discussions regarding this type of classified information? Yes or no?
My response in the Senate yesterday, yes, I stand by that response. Obviously, the release of the screenshots that came from that chat group today were a refresher on what happened. As I said earlier, I was not involved with that portion of the chat, so it did not come to my recollection yesterday.
Thank you. So I take that as you stand by your do not recall yesterday stance when it was you're asked those questions. You've been in office 43 days. Director Radcliffe has been in office 62 days. This was considered the first major military operation using lethal force of the Trump administration. Was this the first, this was probably the first time that you've been involved with a discussion like this on a thread. It was not discussing, you were not on a group chat discussing where we're gonna go for lunch. You're discussing putting men and women of the armed services in harm's way. That's a major decision. So, and when did that happen? 10 days ago? Okay, I'll answer that. It happened 10 days ago. Here's the point. Like something of this magnitude, it's something that you would not forget. It's something that most people, if you're taking this job so seriously, that you would not forget. I mean, since I've been on this committee, there's been days that I have woken up in the middle of the night from the things I learned in SCIF. So deciding to use military force is something hard to imagine. So the do not recall doesn't pass the smell test. It makes it, it's unbelievable that was the case. So that's what the American people don't understand. And I know a lot of folks in this administration were saying that they're going to take on the establishment and drain the swamp, but you have become that swamp in a matter of days, not weeks or months, days. So one of the things we're going to look into is what actually occurred, because the American people deserve a full accounting. Additionally, the main person who was involved in this thread that a lot of people want to talk to is Secretary of Defense Hegseth. And a lot of questions were brought up regarding his drinking habits in his confirmation hearing. To your knowledge, do you know whether Pete Hegseth had been drinking before he leaked classified information?
I don't have any knowledge of Secretary Hegseth's personal habits.
Director Radcliffe, same question. Yes or no?
You know, no, I'm going to answer that. I think that's an offensive line of questioning. The answer is no. I find it interesting that you want to. I'm going to answer. You asked me a question. You want an answer?
No, listen.
You don't want to focus on the good work that the CIA is doing, that the intelligence community.
Director, I reclaim my time. Director, I reclaim my time. Here, I have huge respect for the CIA, huge respect for our men and women in uniform. But this was a question that's on the top of minds of every American, right? He stood in front of a podium in Europe holding a drink. So of course, we want to know if his performance is compromised. If people were asking if the General Austin was compromised because of a heart issue,
was his performance compromised because of a successful
I yield
strike?
back, Mr. I bring my.
You want to know? You want
time.
to talk about accepting
I reclaim my
responsibility?
time.
Do you think you
I
should
reclaim my
accept
time,
responsibility
Chairman.
for a successful
Let me ask
strike
you-
to make Americans safer?
I
You want to
reclaim my
focus
time.
on.
I reclaim my time. So here's the thing. This is serious. As somebody, we've been briefed in this committee about using Signal. One of the things they basically said, the most secure phone call, the least secure text messaging. And we know that your people, Russians, Chinese, are on your phone.
Gentleman's time's expired. Gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Colts, Ms. Plaskett.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and good morning to the witnesses. First let me say that we do have to, in this committee, try as much as possible to remain nonpartisan as opposed to bipartisan. I can recall being that way when I was counsel on the House Ethics Committee, and it's a hard position to take. But I'm really struck by the fact that in December of 2023, many people made Secretary Lloyd Austin go through the stages of the cross in self-flagellation and mea culpas for not informing the president that he was having a surgery. And now how we're treating Secretary Hedgepeth as if he is untouchable. Mike Waltz, when he was a member of Congress, went in the Committee on Armed Services to talk about and slammed Austin for holding himself to a different standard than the American people. And yet we are not doing this across the board. And that's disappointing, at the very least, very disappointing. Director Gabbard, thank you for your testimony. And one of the things that I believe I heard you say was that when there was a discussion by DOGE as to the cuts to foreign aid, that there had not been a request for an intelligence and national security or an intelligence assessment of the impact of those cuts. Was that your testimony a little earlier?
Congresswoman, I have not seen any kind of actual official assessment either within the intelligence community or outside of it on what the effects of those cuts to USAID programs has been.
But it was not requested by DOGE of you or of any of the areas in which you have oversight over?
I'm not aware of any requests.
Okay, great. Thank you. I know that there has been some open source reporting on what the effect of those cuts are. I mean, when we think about several examples, Kenya, our strongest regional ally in the Horn of Africa, and a key partner with us in the fight against terrorist group Al-Shabaab. And, according to the Washington Post, that's not definitive, and we can talk about this in closed session. Some Kenyan journalists are now being trained by Beijing, mirroring the U.S. programs that have been cut by the administration. Director Gabbard, is letting China train Kenyan journalists going to make Kenya more or less receptive to American requests of the Kenyan government, do you believe?
As you said, Congresswoman, our relationship with Kenya has been very longstanding.
So do cuts of ours to train journalists in Kenya make them more or less, and Beijing having that make them more or less receptive?
Clearly there is strategic competition taking place. I'll withhold my personal view to look at an official assessment.
Well, I was asking for your director view, not your personal view. And then additionally, we have ended Voice of America, which provided accurate, unbiased news, in our opinion. Meanwhile, St. Petersburg University has announced that it's opened 11 Russian language centers across Africa that pay special attention to the promotion of traditional Russian spiritual and moral values. Director Gabbard, is Russia a friend or a foe? Are they our friend or our adversary?
They are an adversary.
Thank you. I believe that this reckless cuts make terrorism and our influence in Africa, which is on the front lines of terrorism, a real threat to us, and we need to be careful of it. Director Patel, one of the benefits of being here kind of in the middle is I get to hear other people's testimony and the questions that are asked. I know that Mr. Carson asked you questions specifically about the Counterterrorism Division. And we know that there has been some open source reporting that says that individuals within that division have been removed or been moved, not necessarily fired, but moved. Do you know if that is correct?
I don't have any personal information on that, but people within the CTD component, which is a large component of the FBI, move all the time.
And have they been moved? Are you able to get that information to us, whether they have or have not been moved?
I'll go back to my team and see who has been moved. If you have a particular interest, we'll share it with you.
Of course, we have an interest in Counterterrorism Division and movement of individuals within that. Because one of the other things I'm concerned about is you have stated, I believe in other areas, that the disbandment of certain sections of the FBI related to intel and breaking up components. Can you explain to us how you intend to do that, or what you would like to do and why?
My intention is to reprioritize counterintelligence authorities and cyber capabilities to focus on violent crime and national security, and that's what I'm doing.
The gentlewoman's time has expired.
Thank you.
The gentlewoman from Missouri, Madam.
Thank you, Caroline. Two questions for Director Gabbard, just on this. Director Gabbard, you referenced the past intelligence reports and assessments on this, including that 2017 one that was signed off, as Ed noted, by every Republican on the Senate Intelligence Community, including the acting chair of the time, now Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who said in a statement that they did not find any evidence of Russian collusion, but they did find, however, is very troubling, and they found irrefutable evidence of Russian meddling. One, are you saying that he's wrong in that statement that he made then? And secondly, what would you say to people who believe that you're only releasing these documents now to improve your standing with the president after he said that your intelligence assessments were wrong?
Well, first, I want to correct something that you stated, which was citing the Senate Intelligence Committee's report as being one and the same. I think you said the intelligence community. The Senate Intelligence Committee has a very different function than the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. The evidence and the intelligence that has been declassified and released is irrefutable. I'm going to let Caroline speak to Secretary Rubio.
I'll speak to both questions. First, on Secretary Rubio, he put out a statement in 2020 following that Senate Intelligence Committee report, and he said what they found is troubling. We found irrefutable evidence of Russian meddling, which the Director of National Intelligence just confirmed for all of you, that Russia was trying to sow distrust and chaos. But what's the outrage in this that Secretary Rubio did not say at the time, the Democrats were saying at the time, is the fact that the intelligence community was concocting this narrative that the president colluded with the Russians, that the president's son was holding secret meetings with the Russians, all of these lies that were never true. And he also said at that time, we discovered deeply troubling actions taken by the FBI under Comey, particularly their acceptance and willingness to rely on the Steele dossier without verifying its methodology or sourcing. The Steele dossier that many outlets in this room ran as the gospel truth, and it was cooked up and paid for by the Clinton campaign. As for your second question, Caitlin, I think, who is saying that she would release this to try to boost her standing with the president? Who has said that?
Well, the president has publicly undermined her when it came to Iran. He said she was wrong. He told me that she didn't know what she was talking about. That was on Air Force One on camera.
The only people who are suggesting that the Director of National Intelligence would release evidence to try to boost her standing with the president are the people in this room who constantly try to sow distrust and chaos amongst the president's cabinet, and it is not working. I will just answer your question directly. I am with the President of the United States every day. He has the utmost confidence in Director Gabbard. He always has. He continues to, and that is true of his entire cabinet, who is all working as one team to deliver on the promises this president made. Does anyone else have questions for Director Gabbard? And then we'll turn.
Ms. Gabbard, if confirmed, you'll be entrusted with our nation's most important secrets. We're all entrusted with that information to serve the American people and to keep our country safe. Unfortunately, as you said in your opening statement, we've seen too many instances in recent years of people who were trusted with classified information and went on to abuse and politicize that trust. For example, in October 2020, more than 50 former intelligence officers, many of whom still held a top secret clearance, wrote a letter invoking their credentials to make false claims about Hunter Biden's laptop, likely being Russian disinformation. Do you agree that this was an example of intelligence professionals abusing and politicizing their past positions and credentials?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I do, and it is an example of what needs to end and why the American people elected President Trump to bring about those necessary reforms.
Thank you. Will you commit that no one who abuses his past position and credentials in this fashion will hold a security clearance in the future?
Yes.
Thank you. Now, I want to be fair to my Democratic colleagues. Such abuses aren't just a problem on the left. Also in 2020, President Trump's former national security advisor, John Bolton, published a book in which he revealed sensitive conversations with the president on national security matters, including highly classified information. He didn't submit this book for review and approval to ensure that our national security secrets were protected. Do you agree that John Bolton's actions likewise undermined public trust?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Will you commit that no one who so abuses his past position and risks the exposure of classified information by publishing a book without submitting it for review and getting approval before publication will hold a security clearance again or be trusted with classified information again?
Yes.
Thank you. Let's move on to the topic of ODNI reform that I mentioned in my opening statement. Congress originally envisioned the ODNI to be a small coordinating agency that directs, rather than replicates, the now 18 constituent agencies that make up our intelligence community. Over the years, however, the ODNI has strayed from this vision to an organization that now publicly boasts nearly 2,000 people, more than half of whom are not detailed from an intelligence agency, but rather are career ODNI bureaucrats. They've even developed centers that are producing their own analysis. Will you commit today to working with this committee to restoring the ODNI to its original size, scope, and function?
Yes, Senator, I look forward to working with you and the committee as I, if confirmed, assess the current status of who is working in the ODNI and the function that they fulfilled to make sure of its effectiveness and elimination of redundancies and bloating.
Thank you. Do you support some of the policy proposals I mentioned in my opening statement about capping the size of the ODNI, eliminating ODNI taxes, returning employees back to their home agencies to do real intelligence work?
Yes, Senator, I look forward to working with you as we assess where the ODNI needs to be in order to fulfill its core mission and function.
Thank you. And in your preparation for this hearing and this important responsibility, have you developed any thoughts that explains the mission creep and the empire building that we've seen at the ODNI in recent years?
Yes, Senator, I've had the opportunity to review the history of the ODNI, to speak to Ambassador Negroponte, the first Director of National Intelligence, as well as others who have served in this position. I think there are a number of contributing factors to the creation of centers, or not centers, but offices like the recently eliminated Office of DEI within ODNI, and other areas where I need to go in and assess the replication and the duplication of responsibilities that exist elsewhere and some of the other intelligence elements that ODNI has oversight over.
Thank you. Colleagues, I will lead by example and yield back 1 minute of my time.
Tulsi, thank you for being here.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. At President Trump's direction and with the support and coordination with the House Intelligence Committee Chairman Rick Crawford, today we've released a declassified oversight majority staff report that was produced in September of 2020. The stunning revelations that we are releasing today should be of concern to every American. This is not about Democrats or Republicans. This has to do with the integrity of our democratic republic and American voters having faith that the votes cast will count. There is irrefutable evidence that detail how President Obama and his national security team directed the creation of an intelligence community assessment that they knew was false. They knew it would promote this contrived narrative that Russia interfered in the 2016 election to help President Trump win, selling it to the American people as though it were true. It wasn't. The report that we released today shows in great detail how they carried this out. They manufactured findings from shoddy sources. They suppressed evidence and credible intelligence that disproved their false claims. They disobeyed traditional tradecraft intelligence community standards and withheld the truth from the American people. In doing so, they conspired to subvert the will of the American people who elected Donald Trump in that election in November of 2016. They worked with their partners in the media to promote this lie, ultimately to undermine the legitimacy of President Trump and launching what would be a years-long coup against him and his administration. We're here today because the American people deserve the truth, they deserve accountability, and they deserve justice. The records that we released on Friday that were ODNI records, Senator Chuck Grassley's release on Monday of what is known as the Clinton Annex, which was an appendix to the Department of Justice Office of Inspector General's 2018 report, as well as the House Intelligence Committee's majority oversight report that we're releasing today, all come back to and confirm the same report. There was a gross politicization and manipulation of intelligence by the Obama administration intended to delegitimize President Trump even before he was inaugurated, ultimately usurping the will of the American people. I'm going to go over the key findings from the House Intelligence Report, which investigated the claims that were made by an intelligence community assessment ordered by President Obama and published in January of 2017. First, Putin's principal interests relating to the 2016 election were to undermine faith in the U.S. democratic process, not show any preference of a certain candidate. In fact, this report shows Putin held back from leaking compromising material on Hillary Clinton prior to the election, instead planning to release it after the election to weaken what Moscow viewed as an inevitable Clinton presidency. In the January 2017 intelligence community assessment that President Obama ordered, John Brennan, who was CIA director at the time, and the intelligence community intentionally suppressed intelligence that showed Putin was saving the most damaging material that he had in his possession about Hillary Clinton until after her potential and likely victory. The report goes into great detail about the information that Russia and Putin had on Hillary Clinton, which included possible criminal acts like secret meetings with multiple named U.S. religious organizations in which State Department officials offered, in exchange for supporting Secretary Clinton's campaign for the presidency, significant increases in financing from the State Department. They also had documents that showed the patronage of the State Department to State Department employees who would go and support Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign. There were high-level DNC emails that detailed evidence of Hillary's, quote, psycho-emotional problems, uncontrolled fits of anger, aggression, and cheerfulness, and that then Secretary Clinton was allegedly on a daily regimen of heavy tranquilizers. Then CIA Director Brennan and the intelligence community mischaracterized intelligence and relied on dubious substandard sources to create a contrived false narrative that Putin developed a quote-unquote clear preference for Trump. Brennan and the IC misled lawmakers by referencing the debunked Steele dossier to assess quote-unquote Russia's plans and intentions, falsely suggesting that this dossier had intelligence value when he knew that it was discredited. The intelligence community excluded significant intelligence and ignored or selectively quoted reliable intelligence that contradicted the intelligence community assessment's key findings on Putin's alleged support for Trump. Including this intelligence reporting would have exposed the ICA's claim as implausible, if not ridiculous. The intelligence community assessment omitted reliably sourced information, such as how some Russian intelligence officials were quote-unquote planning for candidate Hillary Clinton's victory, while others assessed neither Trump nor Clinton would respect Russia's interests. As was reflected in the ODNI documents that we released on Friday, multiple intelligence community assessments released in the months leading up to the November 2016 election concluded that Russia had neither the intent nor capability to impact the outcome of the U.S. election. On December 5th of 2016, the FBI and ODNI gave the House Intelligence Committee its first post-election classified briefing, in which there was no mention of Putin aspiring to elect Trump by either agency. The Presidential Daily Brief, drafted on December 8th of 2016, stated that no Russian or criminal actors impacted vote counts. This document was pulled just hours before it was to be published due to quote-unquote new guidance. If it had been published, it would have been briefed to both President Obama and President-elect Donald Trump. On December 9th, 2016, a National Security Council meeting was called to gather President Obama's senior national security officials, which included CIA Director Brennan, then Obama DNI James Clapper, Susan Rice, and others. Following that secret meeting, DNI Clapper's assistant sent an email to the intelligence community with the subject line, POTUS tasking on Russia election meddling, tasking ODNI leaders to create a new assessment per the president's request. The House Intelligence Committee oversight report that we released today reveals that, quote, unlike routine intelligence community analysis, the intelligence community assessment was a high-profile product ordered by the president, President Obama. It directed senior intelligence community agency heads and created an intelligence community assessment limited to just 5 analysts using one principal drafter. This is not something that occurs in the normal path of producing an intelligence community assessment that reflects the views across the intelligence community. The production of this intelligence community assessment was subject to unusual directives directly from the president and senior political appointees, especially the former director of the CIA, John Brennan. The House Intelligence Committee oversight report also shows how later that same day, on December 9th, Brennan ordered the publication of quote-unquote substandard reporting on Russian activities, which had previously been withheld from publication of prior assessments because the information was judged, quote, to have not met long-standing publication standards. Some of the information later used in the Obama-ordered assessment over the objections of veteran CIA officers was, quote-unquote, unclear or from unknown sources. The Intelligence Committee's oversight report reveals that CIA Director Brennan overruled senior CIA officers who challenged the Obama-ordered intelligence assessment, stating, quote, we don't have direct information that Putin wanted to get Trump elected. Yet, the Obama-directed assessment was published on January 6, 2017, which explicitly stated, quote, we assess Putin and the Russian government aspired to help President-elect Trump's election chances when possible by discrediting Secretary Clinton and publicly contrasting her unfavorably to him, end of quote. The CIA and FBI, then led by John Brennan and James Comey, expressed high confidence in this judgment, while the NSA expressed moderate confidence. Yet, as the report we released today shows, the ICA, the Intelligence Community Assessment, did not cite any report where Putin indicated helping Trump win was an objective. The opposite is true. With regards to the Steele dossier, we now know that one of the source documents that the Obama administration used in the creation of this intelligence assessment in January of 2017 was none other than the discredited, unverified Steele dossier. The House Intel report states, quote, contradicting public claims by then CIA Director Brennan that the dossier was not in any way incorporated into this intelligence assessment. The dossier was referenced in the intelligence assessment's main body text and further detailed in a 2-page assessment annex. John Brennan lied, and he denied using this dossier in this intelligence assessment that President Obama ordered because he knew it was discredited. It was a politically motivated, manufactured document. He directed senior CIA officials to use it anyway. CIA officer told the House Intelligence Committee staff as they investigated this, quote, the director of the CIA, John Brennan, refused to remove it, and when confronted with the dossier's many flaws, responded, quote, yes, but doesn't it ring true? Even the bipartisan Senate Select Committee on Intelligence report published in 2020 criticized the FBI's handling of the Steele dossier, noting its completely unverified nature and purposeful sidestepping of intelligence community procedures in its use. Now, President Obama, Hillary Clinton, John Brennan, James Clapper, James Comey, and others, including their mouthpieces in the media, knowingly lied as they repeated the contrived narrative that was created in this January 2017 intelligence community assessment with high confidence as though it were fact. John Brennan, as CIA director, stated in a memo to his agency staff in December of 2016, saying, quote, there is strong consensus among us on the scope, nature, and intent of Russian interference in our presidential election. This was reported by NBC News, confirming that Brennan, along with James Clapper and James Comey, agreed with the CIA's assessment that Russia intervened to help Trump win the presidency. As Obama's Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper was tasked with overseeing the creation of this assessment in January of 2017 by President Obama, and he expressed confidence in its findings. In a 2018 interview with the Harvard Gazette, he talked about how he provided Trump with the same classified assessment that President Obama received, which included the high confidence judgment that Putin directly ordered the hacking and election interference. Clapper then went on to add, "I think they, the Russians, actually influenced the outcome." This is a brief summary of the details that you'll find within the House Majority Staff's report in their investigation into the Obama-directed January 2017 Intelligence Community Assessment that leads us to the very same conclusion that we announced in the release of our documents on Friday. The implications of this are far-reaching and have to do with the integrity of our democratic republic. It has to do with an outgoing president taking action to manufacture intelligence to undermine and usurp the will of the American people in that election and launch what would be a years-long coup against the incoming President of the United States, Donald Trump. Thank you.
Thank you for the time, and I struggle, and if you look at my notes, I've changed my mind about 1,000,000 times what I'd like to talk about. I'd like to first start with Director Radcliffe. I find it offensive for you to accuse me as a Democrat of not caring about national threats. I very much wanted to talk about those, in fact, had prepared questions in advance of this hearing about those threats, specifically about biosecurity and bioterrorism, but I don't have time to ask those questions because the threat is in the House. The threat is across the dais, and I need to ask these questions. It's my job to ask these questions of you. Because when I served in the military, and I served in classified environments, had this happened to me, I would have walked my resignation in immediately. This is not okay. Communicating these sorts of things in Signal is not okay. Targets, times, those kinds of things are absolutely classified, and we all know it. I know it, these people know it, you all know it. And the fact that we're having to have these conversations now means that I can't ask the questions that I need to ask about things like bioterrorism and biosecurity. And so I'd like to put you in check as well, sir, because you can't assume who I am any more than I can assume who you are, sir. I would like to move my questions, however, over to Director Gabbard, because you are the DNI. You do have an obligation and a responsibility. I'm going to speak to you specifically about the fact that you have spent much of your 40 days talking about the importance of making sure that we don't reveal classified information, making sure that we don't leak information. You're a former battalion commander in the Army. I don't think that you would have necessarily appreciated the kind of leaking of information that I believe absolutely did happen in this Signal channel and is worthy of a further investigation. In fact, this committee established something called 50 U.S.C. 3235A, and this committee, on a bipartisan, apartisan basis, requires you, the DNI, to swiftly notify Congress and the Intelligence Committee if you're aware of any sort of significant unauthorized disclosure or compromise of classified information, which I would argue this has all of the markings of being that. And so if you, as the DNI, see such a thing anywhere within your organization's purview, you have the obligation to begin an investigation to report back to us on that. Would this seem to qualify to you as something worthy of that investigation?
Thank you for your question, Congresswoman. In this situation, Secretary Hegseth has the classification and declassification authority over DOD information.
This chat did not have the auspice of being a DOD chat. There's no such thing as labeling it as DOD. This was a chat amongst a great variety of people, and you, according to our law that we passed here bipartisanly, have an obligation when you think there has been a tangible, significant leak of information to instigate an investigation. Do you not think it's important to do such a thing?
Well, the National Security Council is investigating
Yes or no?
this inadvertent leak. And again, I point to Secretary Hegseth as having the classification.
I would argue that Secretary
authority.
Hegseth, if he had the dignity that he needs to have, should be walking his resignation in, because I believe that his probably is heading toward being relieved of his duty based on what I think are significant and illegal leaks, most likely. I would like it if you would please commit to this organization that you will follow the law, and I would like it if you would also investigate what is likely to be more than just this chat, because if there's one, there's more than one. If there's smoke, there's fire. Would you please obligate yourself and your organization to that investigation?
Yeah, Congresswoman, yes, I will follow the law.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And Director Patel, I learned just recently that you only heard about this yesterday, which blows my mind since I heard about it 2 days ago, and I'm just a low on the dais, junior chipmunk here. Did you really only hear about this yesterday?
The exact timeline I'm not aware of, but yeah, I think it was yesterday or the night before.
And now that another day has passed, do you believe...
Well, actually, it was the night before the hearing.
Now that another day has passed, do you believe that it's now time potentially for the FBI to open an investigation into this?
I'm not going to comment on that.
Because you're the director of the FBI, you don't believe it's appropriate to comment on that?
Because there's a process in place, there's an ongoing litigation, and the National Security Council is reviewing this matter. And I'm not going to discuss any open or closed investigations.
That ongoing investigation, literally, the lawsuit happened today or yesterday afternoon, and the idea that you don't have an opinion on this at this point is frustrating to me.
No, it's not. I'm not going to prejudge any matters, and the men and women of the FBI will call the balls and strikes.
Reclaiming my time,
not
sir.
you.
Sir, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to have...
Gentlewoman's recognized. You have
Thank
4
you.
seconds remaining.
No, I have more than
You have
that
2
because
seconds
Mr.
remaining.
Patel would not acknowledge
Gentlewoman's
me.
time has expired. Mr. Stubbe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Gabbard, I didn't intend to get into the Jeffrey Goldberg story, but something you said has sort of puzzled me. According to open source reporting at 11:44 on the morning of March 15th, Secretary Hegseth put into this group text a detailed operation plan, including targets, the weapons we were going to be using, attack sequences, and timing. And yet you've testified that nothing in that chain was classified. Wouldn't that be classified? What if that had been made public that morning before the attack took place?
Senator, I can attest to the fact that there were no classified or intelligence equities that were included in that chat group at any time. And I
so
defer,
the attack sequencing and timing and weapons and targets you don't consider should have been classified?
I defer to the Secretary of Defense, the National Security Council on that question.
Well, you're the head of you're the head of the intelligence community. You're supposed to know about classifications. So your testimony very clearly today is that nothing was in that set of texts that were classified. I'll follow up on Senator Wyden's question. If that's the case, please release that whole text stream so that the public can have a view of what actually transpired on this discussion. It's hard for me to believe that targets and timing and weapons would not have been classified. Well, let me move on. You approved this report, this annual report, prepared by the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. Is this submitted to the White House routinely in anticipation of its public release?
I don't know what you mean by submitted routinely.
Was this report submitted to the White House before its release today?
It was submitted to them once it was completed. I think probably around the same time it was sent to all of you.
I want to move on. One note that surprised me, I've been on this committee now this is my 13th year. Every single one of these reports that we have had has mentioned global climate change as a significant national security threat, except this one. Has something happened? Has global climate change been solved? Why is that not in this report? And who made the decision that it should not be in the report when it's been in every one of the 11 prior reports?
I can't speak to the decisions made previously, but this annual threat assessment has been focused very directly on the threats that we deem most critical to the United States and our national security. Obviously, we're aware of occurrences within the environment and how they may impact operations, but we're focused on the direct threats to Americans' safety, well-being, and security.
How about how they will impact mass migration, famine, dislocation, political violence, which is the finding, by the way, of the 2019 annual threat assessment under the first Trump administration? You don't consider that a significant national security threat?
For the intelligence community, being aware of the environment that we're operating in, is a given. What I focused this annual threat assessment on, and the IC focused this threat assessment on, are the most extreme and critical direct threats to our national security.
Let me ask a direct question. Who decided climate change should be left out of this report after it's been in the prior 11? Where was that decision
I
made?
gave direction to our team at ODNI to focus on the most extreme and critical national security threats
Your
that we
direction
face.
include no comments on climate change?
Senator, as I said, I focused on the most extreme and direct national security threats.
That's not a response to my question.
That we face.
Did you instruct that there be no finding in terms of climate change in this report?
I don't recall giving that instruction.
Final questions in a few short seconds that I have left. You all concede, and it's in the report repeatedly, about the cyber danger from China, from Russia, from Iran. Why then is the administration deconstructing CISA? 130 people fired. The General Hawk talked about the importance of public-private cooperation. That section of CISA seems to have been disestablished. What possible policy reason is there for undermining CISA's relationship to the states with regard to elections and to the private sector with regard to cybersecurity when the cybersecurity threat is only growing? Anybody want to tackle that?
I won't speak for all of my colleagues here, but I don't believe any of us have any insight into those specific staffing decisions that have been made.
Well, let me ask you this question. You've all found, the report has found explicitly growing cyber threats, including to elections from Russia, China, Iran. Do you believe that it's in the national interest to diminish our capacity to deal with those cyber issues? Yes or no?
President Trump is focused on effects and making sure that the people that we have and the resources that we have are focused on our national security. He and his team recognize that more people doesn't necessarily always mean better effects. Those are some of the things that are driving the changes that we're seeing across the administration, is getting all of our agencies back and focused on their core mission.
General Hawk, do you agree that...
Senator King, your time is expired.
Time is up. Thank you.
I love you too, man, wherever you are. Thank you. Thank you. It is truly awesome and energizing to be here with all of you. I hope that you are feeling energized and inspired by all of the incredible speakers, Brett Cooper, Riley Gaines, everyone coming through here. But I just want to tell you that you inspire me, seriously. You know, DC, there are some good days and there are some dark days. But what keeps me going are people like you. People like you who made it possible for President Trump to get elected and create this truly transformational and historic moment that we are living in here today. We are here because thousands of young leaders like you, great Americans all across the country, they put partisan politics aside and recognize the opportunity to bring in a president who would fight for every single American. And that's exactly what we're doing in Washington every day. When we look back, and I feel like, you know, it's been, what, 6 months-ish since President Trump has been in office, not even 6 months hardly. What happened in that year leading up to the election? It feels like such a long time ago, but I want to spend just a moment on this because it's important for us to recognize what Steve Bannon was just talking about, the deep state. When we go back and look at all of those days that President Trump had to spend in a courtroom because of the constant lawfare that was being waged against him by his political opponents and the deep state, who were terrified that the American people might choose to elect him once again. You look at all of the propaganda that was thrown his way, the lies, the smears, the attacks that were thrown his way, how many times they actually tried to throw him in jail. And even at that, man, that mugshot will go down in history as one of the best pictures ever. All of their attempts to take him off the ballot, as we were going through that, I often reflected at really what was behind it. They were there thinking, okay, we have all of this power, we need to silence him. undermining our democratic republic as they claim to be doing so to save democracy. But when we really take a step back, we recognize that they were acting out of fear. They were terrified of losing their perceived power. They're terrified of their own personal position or fame or profit or whatever the thing was. They were terrified, ultimately afraid of us. Terrified that in the United States of America, that was built on the foundation of these ideals of freedom and liberty for every single American, terrified that we may actually use our freedom, that we may lift up our voices and stand up for and work hard to bring about the vision that our founding fathers had for us. A government that is truly of, by, and for the people. To me, that is what President Trump's America First agenda is all about. That's why the deep state fought so hard to try to stop us from even having the freedom to choose who we wanted as our president and commander-in-chief. And despite their best efforts, we the people prevailed. And this memory of this, which every one of us played our own role in bringing about, is so important to keep at the forefront, because the deep state has not gone away. They exist within every single agency of the federal government, in the national security state, and the propaganda media. They are continuing to fight hard every single day, in spite of the fact that the voices of the people delivered this resounding victory for President Trump and to our country, saying unequivocally, we are coming together, Americans from all different backgrounds and different walks of life, saying we choose freedom. We choose peace. We choose to come together for truth. Not my truth or your truth or their truth, but fundamental objective truth. We come together for common sense. And with President Trump's election, we, the people, have brought about this revolution that brings us back to our founding principles, that brings us back to our founding documents, our Constitution. This is the oath that we all swore, the oath to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And by the way, it is the same oath that every person who goes and works within the intelligence community takes. Every employee swears this oath. It's important for us to keep it front and center because it is foundational to who we are. That we remember what we are fighting for. When we talk about freedom, we are talking about freedom of speech. Remembering that it wasn't that long ago that we had parents speaking up for the safety and well-being of their children at Board of Education meetings who, under the Biden administration, were then targeted as domestic violent extremists. We have to remember how, and these are documents that we will be declassifying and releasing very soon, about how on day one of the Biden administration, meaning January 21st of 2021, his national security advisor issued a memo essentially laying the groundwork for who they would be targeting as domestic violent extremists. And one of the documents that was ordered, one of the directives that was given in this memo, was to the Director of National Intelligence to come up with a document that went into very specific descriptions of what to look out for when we are looking for domestic violent extremists. And so what you'll see there are detailed descriptions of what we would later see the Biden administration target. Those who were complaining about or unhappy with COVID-19 mandates and policies. Parents who were afraid that their children might be forced to get the vaccine when they went to school against their parents' wishes. People who were expressing anti-authority views. I could go on in this list of people, groups, thoughts, free speech, they were labeled as domestic violent extremists, and then use that label to go and then force these tech companies, some of them were willing, some unwilling, to censor Americans' free speech in the name of going after domestic violent extremists. We have to expose their tactics and the playbook of the deep state so that we, the people, can make sure we never allow this to happen again. By electing President Trump, we chose our Constitution. We chose freedom of speech. We chose freedom to worship so that we can know that as we go to our place of worship, or if we worship in the privacy of our own homes, that we won't have to worry about the FBI thinking that we were suspicious or had to be surveilled as they did to those they labeled as radical traditionalist Catholics simply for attending Latin Mass. By electing President Trump, we chose freedom. Freedom to exercise our right to bear arms. There's already work being done, and there's more to come there to undo the damage that has been done for so long that has undermined that fundamental right. By electing President Trump, we chose our right to privacy and the protection of our civil liberties as guaranteed under the Fourth Amendment. Under President Trump, we chose our Declaration of Independence. I'm smiling because I think it was on Thursday, I was there and delivering the intelligence brief to the president, and towards the end of it, he had a couple of guests who were coming in to join him for lunch. And just seeing the pride and excitement that he shared as he wanted to show them the Declaration of Independence that he put on the wall right next to the Resolute desk in the Oval Office. That declaration that reminds us all that all men are created equal, endowed by our Creator. Not by anyone in government, but our Creator with certain inalienable rights, among those our right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So the historic moment that we live in, it's important sometimes to step away from the noise, to recognize what happened in order to create this opportunity that we have, and therefore to inform the great work that we have ahead of us. You think the campaign was hard, you think what President Trump went through was hard, and it was. The road ahead will not be easy. I can attest personally that in my work as the Director of National Intelligence, the deep state is fighting us every step of the way. And it exists within every single federal agency. And so I feel the same frustration that I see many of you expressing on X or in different platforms about why aren't things going faster? Why aren't we getting results more quickly? I feel this frustration every single day. We are pushing hard. Know that they are pushing hard back. It's okay. We're not going anywhere. We're here to fight for you and to fight for the red, white, and blue that's behind you. We can't do this alone. It will take all of us who love our country and who deeply cherish our freedoms to stand united in this fight. It's going to come with hardship and sacrifice. As you know, it comes with name-calling and smears and lies and attacks. But here's the beautiful thing, is the harder they push back, the more smears and lies that are published in the Washington Post and the New York Times and the Atlantic and many others, the more we know that we are exactly on the target. And on those days where you might feel a little tired and you might feel a little discouraged, and we all get there at some point in time, I go back and think about what President Trump has been through. He has sacrificed more than anyone else. He has been attacked and targeted more than anyone else. And most significantly, 1 year ago tomorrow was the day in Butler, Pennsylvania, when a gunman tried to take his life missing by just a hair. And so on those days when you feel like you're not quite sure if you have any more fight left in you, think back to that day when he popped right up. He was not cowed. He was not afraid. He was not running away. What did he do? He raised his fist and looked at all of the people who were there, just as you are here today. And he said, fight, fight, fight. And that's exactly what we have to continue to do. Not motivated by hate for those who are trying to take our freedoms away, but by love. I know President Trump is motivated deeply by his love for our country. This is where his strength and his resilience comes from. He is motivated deeply by his care for every one of you, every one of us, the American people, and his commitment to make the most of every single day that he has in the White House to bring about this reality of a country where we can live in peace with prosperity and security and freedom for all Americans. This is why I'm so grateful to be able to have earned President Trump's trust and confidence, to be able to serve as a member of his cabinet in the role that I am in, because we have a lot of work to do. So the thing I want you to go home with is the knowledge that you, not a single one of you, should underestimate the power of your voice and your energy and your work and your role in bringing about this historic change that we have all embarked on together. Don't let anyone ever tell you that this is not your time, or that you're too young, or maybe you'll go and do something in a few years, or 5 or 10 years or 20 years. The time is now. Electing President Trump was just the first step to be able to get to work, to do this important work. It is tough, but it is our purpose that drives us. I'm grateful to have experienced from a young age that I found I was happiest when I was doing things for others, when I was trying to be of service to others, trying my best to be pleasing to God with my life by making a positive impact and being of service to God's children. And that's really what motivated me to choose service as a path for my life. I didn't know what form it would take or where it would take me, but I knew that this is what I wanted to do. And it's taken me through elected office in different arenas and through the military, now for over 20 years, and now as Director of National Intelligence. But I first started when I was 21 years old. And so for any of you who are thinking of running for office, maybe you're being told some of the things I was told. I was 21 and people said, oh, okay, you have a bright future, but you're too young. Maybe you should go and take some more college classes and, I don't know, wait around until somebody feels like you're qualified to go. But I knew that the most important qualification was my desire to serve, to have that positive impact in my community. So I didn't listen to any of them, and I ran and got elected at 21. They told me the same thing when I ran for Congress at 31. Tulsi, you're great. You got a bright future. It's not your time. Come back in 20 years. I had come back from multiple deployments at that point in time, understanding and feeling to my core the cost of war, and knowing that I needed to be in a place to make a greater impact. Where better than at that time in Congress, where I could help to influence some of these decisions about peace and war and share the experiences of my brothers and sisters who I served alongside, my experience, and honor the memories every single day as I continue to do, as Secretary Hegseth does. I know President Trump has the lives and well-being of our service members on his heart every day, knowing the sacrifice that's made. We must remain undeterred. For me, I have always turned to my faith in God in those difficult moments and these challenging times. and finding that strength and that confidence and that peace and that shelter and that courage that can only come from having faith in God's unconditional love for me, and knowing that all I have to do is do my very best every day to be pleasing to Him and have faith that whatever the outcome, it will be His will that is done. So as we forge ahead together, I encourage you to stand strong, to be joyful warriors, to always remember that with God all things are possible, and knowing that we can change our mindset. Somebody brings me a problem, happens on a daily basis, I say thank you, good, now I can solve it. Hard challenge comes my way, or maybe I am having a difficult day, awesome. It's my opportunity to say, yes, Lord, here I am, send me. It is inspired by God's unconditional love that we are charged to live and lead and serve in a reflection of His love for all of us, with this eternal gratitude in our hearts for the blessings and the freedoms that He has and continues to bestow upon every one of us. When I was deployed to Iraq in 2005, I served in a medical unit where there was a sign at one of the main gates where our security patrols, infantry patrols went in and out of every day. And the first day that I saw it, and many days thereafter, I was stopped in my tracks because that sign said in big block letters, "Is today the day?" And it was this ever-present reminder, certainly there in a war zone in 2005 during one of the height of that war in Iraq, that any day could be our last. And it was an opportunity to reflect and to pray and to know that I needed to do my best to make every single day count. We look to the tragedy that just happened in Texas. We're at a camp where girls were going, families who were camping over a long holiday weekend, in a moment they lost their lives in this tragedy. Is today the day? Every single day that we wake up with breath in our bodies, we are blessed with the opportunity to take advantage and make the very most of that day. Today is the day. Today is the day for us to stand up for all that we believe in, stand up for each other, stand up for our country, stand up for our freedom and a future that truly realizes the vision that our founders had for this great country. I'm grateful to stand alongside you in this honorable and just fight. We will make this happen together. Thank you so much, everybody. It's great to see you. God bless you. God bless America. Aloha. Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Before I begin, I too would like to start by offering my prayers and condolences to those who were killed in last night's horrific crash. Senator Warner, Senator Moran, our condolences and prayers are with you and all of your constituents. Again, Chairman Cotton, Vice Chairman Warner, and all of the members of the committee, it's an honor to be here before you today. I've appreciated the opportunity to meet with so many of you and address your questions and concerns before today's hearing. I know they've gone, but I'm grateful to Senators Burr and Ernst for their trust and their confidence in taking time to join us here today. To my husband, Abraham, my family, friends, fellow veterans, Medal of Honor recipients, and patriots, thank you for your love and support. I'm honored and grateful to President Trump for his trust and confidence in nominating me to serve our country as the Director of National Intelligence at a time when trust in the intelligence community, unfortunately, is at an all-time low. Chuck Schumer admitted a few years ago, quote, "You take on the intelligence community, they have 6 ways from Sunday at getting back at you." For too long, faulty, inadequate, or weaponized intelligence have led to costly failures and the undermining of our national security and God-given freedoms enshrined in the Constitution. The most obvious example of one of these failures is our invasion of Iraq based upon a total fabrication or complete failure of intelligence. This disastrous decision led to the deaths of tens of thousands of American soldiers, millions of people in the Middle East, mass migration, destabilization, and undermining of the security and stability of our European allies, the rise of ISIS, strengthening of al-Qaeda and other Islamist jihadist groups, and strengthening Iran. Here are just a few other examples. The American people elected Donald Trump as their president not once but twice, and yet the FBI and intelligence agencies were politicized by his opponents to undermine his presidency and falsely portray him as a puppet of Putin. Title I of FISA was used illegally to obtain a warrant to spy on Trump campaign advisor Carter Page, using a Clinton campaign-funded false dossier as their so-called evidence. Biden campaign advisor Tony Blinken was the impetus for the 51 former senior intelligence officials' letter dismissing Hunter Biden's laptop as disinformation specifically to help Biden win the election. Former DNI James Clapper lied to this committee in 2013, denying the existence of programs that facilitated the mass collection of millions of Americans' phone and internet records, yet was never held accountable. Under John Brennan's leadership, the CIA abused its power to spy on Congress, to dodge oversight, lied about doing it until he was caught, and yet has never been held responsible. Under Biden, the FBI abused its power for political reasons to try to surveil Catholics who attend traditional Latin Mass, labeling them as quote-unquote radical traditionalist Catholics. Personally, just 24 hours after I criticized Kamala Harris and her nomination, I was placed on a secret domestic terror watch list called Quiet Skies. Sadly, there are more examples. The bottom line is this must end. President Trump's re-election is a clear mandate from the American people to break this cycle of failure, end the weaponization and politicization of the intelligence community, and begin to restore trust in those who've been charged with the critical task of securing our nation. If confirmed as DNI, I will do my very best to fulfill this mandate and bring leadership to the intelligence community with a laser-like focus on our essential mission, ensuring the safety, security, and freedom of the American people. As the President's principal intelligence advisor, I'll begin by leading by example, checking my own personal views at the door, and committing to delivering intelligence that is collected, analyzed, and reported without bias, prejudice, or political influence. I enlisted in the Army because of the horrific terrorist attack on September 11th. And volunteered to deploy to Iraq in 2005, where I served in a medical unit. After nearly 22 years in uniform with 3 combat deployments to the Middle East and Africa, I'm now a lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Army Reserve, where I serve as a battalion commander of soldiers in Oklahoma, Missouri, and Arkansas. I served in Congress for 8 years on the Homeland Security, Foreign Affairs, and Armed Services committees. And it's my experience in the military and in the halls of Congress that have given me a deep understanding of the complex challenges that our nation faces, in both roles engaging with world leaders, in both roles being privy to highly classified intelligence. So I know firsthand how essential accurate, unbiased, and timely intelligence is to the President, to Congress, and to our warfighters. I also know the heavy cost of intelligence failures and abuses. Senator Collins, you led the creation of ODNI specifically to address those intelligence failures of 9/11 and Iraq's so-called WMDs. The need for the ODNI under strong leadership still exists today. If confirmed, I'll bring my experience and fresh eyes to leading the intelligence community. And my day one priorities will be to assess the global threat environment, identify where gaps in our intelligence exist, integrate intelligence elements, increase information sharing, and ensure that unbiased, apolitical, objective collection and analysis to support the President and policymakers' decision-making occur. I'll work to end the politicization of the intelligence community and ensure there is a clear mission focus in the IC on its core mission of this unbiased, apolitical collection and analysis of intelligence to secure our nation. I'll work to rebuild trust through transparency and accountability. This is a national security imperative. And I'll work to assess and address efficiencies, redundancies, and effectiveness across ODNI to ensure focus of personnel and resources is on our core mission of national security. Now, in my meetings that I've had with many of you, you expressed bipartisan frustration about recent intelligence failures, as well as the lack of responsiveness to your requests for information. Whether it's the surprise October 7th Hamas terrorist attack, to the sudden takeover of Syria by Islamist extremists, failures to identify the source of COVID, anomalous health incidents, UAPs, drones, and more. If confirmed, I look forward to working with you to address these issues. Ensuring the safety, security, and freedom of the American people is a mandate of leadership that rises above partisan politics. If confirmed, my commitment to the President, to you, and to the American people is this: I will do my very best to find the truth, no matter where it leads, and share that truth with President Trump, his advisors, and you in Congress, providing you with that unbiased, timely, and accurate intelligence as you make the tough decisions that'll impact the safety, security, and freedom of the American people. Now, before I close, I want to warn the American people who are watching at home. You may hear lies and smears in this hearing that'll challenge my loyalty to and my love for our country. Those who oppose my nomination imply that I am loyal to something or someone other than God, my own conscience, and the Constitution of the United States, accusing me of being Trump's puppet, Putin's puppet, Assad's puppet, a guru's puppet, Modi's puppet, not recognizing the absurdity of simultaneously being the puppet of 5 different puppet masters. The same tactic was used against President Trump and failed. The American people elected President Trump with a decisive victory and mandate for change. The fact is, what truly unsettles my political opponents is I refuse to be their puppet. I have no love for Assad or Gaddafi or any dictator. I just hate Al-Qaeda. I hate that we have leaders who cozy up to Islamist extremists, minimizing them to so-called rebels. As Jake Sullivan said to Hillary Clinton, quote, Al-Qaeda is on our side in Syria. Well, Syria is now controlled by an Al-Qaeda offshoot, HTS, led by an Islamist jihadist who danced in the streets on 9/11 and who was responsible for the killing of many American service members. Democrat senators in the past resorted to anti-Christian bigotry against some of President Trump's judicial nominees like Amy Coney Barrett and Brian Boucher. I condemn those actions as a Democrat in Congress at the time, as religious bigotry must be thoroughly condemned by all of us, no matter the religion. Unfortunately, there are some Democrat senators who still don't understand the principle of freedom of religion and Article 6 of the Constitution. Quote, no religious test shall ever be required as a qualification to any office or public trust under the United States. Unfortunately, they're once again using the religious bigotry card, but this time trying to foment religious bigotry against Hindus and Hinduism. If anyone is sincerely interested in knowing more about my own personal spiritual path of Hinduism, I welcome you to go to my account on X, where I'll share more on this topic. If confirmed as Director of National Intelligence, I will continue to live by the oath that I have sworn at least 8 times in my life, both in uniform and as a member of Congress. I will support and defend our God-given freedoms enshrined in the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same. Thank you very much for your time. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be happy to take your extra 13 seconds, but I'm going to go back to what I addressed at the outset. I mean, this was not only sloppy, it not only violated all procedures, but if this information had gotten out, American lives could have been lost. The Houthis had this information, could reposition. their defensive systems. So I want to get a little more information about this. Director Gabbard, did you participate in the group chat with Secretary of Defense and other Trump senior officials discussing the Yemen war plans?
Senator, I don't want to get into the specifics.
Ma'am, were you on? You're not going to be willing to address. So you're not. Are you denying? Matt, will you answer my question, ma'am? You were not TG on this group chat.
I'm not going to get into the specifics.
So you refuse to acknowledge whether you were on this group chat.
Senator, I'm not going to get into the specifics.
Why are you going to get into the specifics? Is it because it's all classified?
Because this is currently under review by the National Security
Because
Council.
it's all classified? If it's not classified, share the text now.
As the White House previously
Is it classified or non-classified information on this text?
I can confirm.
Director Radcliffe, were you on the group chat?
Senator, I was on a signal messaging group.
So you were the John Ratcliffe on that chat?
I was.
Thank you. Thank you.
Can I provide some context, Senator, to that?
Yes, but I've got a series of questions.
Well, but I think it's important because at the outset you made a couple of comments about signal messaging using encrypted apps. So that we're clear, one of the first things that happened when I was confirmed as CIA director was signal was loaded onto my computer at the CIA, as it is for most CIA officers. One of the things that I was briefed on very early, Senator, was by the CIA records management folks about the use of signal as a permissible work use. It is. That is a practice that preceded the current administration to the Biden administration.
Director Ratcliffe, I've got a series of questions. If you're making the statement, the statement, the signal is a secure channel.
No, can I answer that? It is.
Sir, I've got a series of
decryption. So
it is.
To finish,
I understand encryption.
It is permissible to use to communicate and coordinate for work purposes, provided, Senator, that any decisions that are made are also recorded through formal channels. Right. So those were procedures that were implemented. My staff implemented those processes, followed those processes, complied with those processes, and finally, just please. So my communications, to be clear, in a signal message group were entirely permissible and lawful and did not include classified information.
Well, we will make that determination, because if it's not classified, share the text with the committee. Let me go on. Director Gabbard, you are the security executive and set access guidelines for classified information. Did you contact the defense secretary or others after this specific military planning was put out and say, hey, we should be doing this in a SCIF?
There was no classified material that was shared in that.
So then if there was no classified material, share it with the committee. You can't have it both ways. These are important jobs. This is our national security. Bobbing and weaving and trying to, filibuster your answer. So please answer the question. If this was Director Gabbard, if this was a rank and file intelligence officer who did this kind of careless behavior, what would you do with them?
Senator, I'll reiterate that there was no classified material that was shared in that.
Ma'am, if there's no classified materials, share. And then if there's no classified materials, then you can't even answer the question whether you're on the chat. This is strangely familiar, and I think my colleagues will remember, when you couldn't answer the question, is Edward Snowden a traitor? Man, I have serious doubts about anyway. Director Gabbard, I'm going to give you this. Tweeted just 11 days ago, and I'm quoting you. Any unauthorized release of classified information is a violation of the law and will be treated as such. So if this information is classified, what are you going to do?
Senator, 2 points here. First of all, there's a difference between inadvertent release versus
careless and sloppy,
malicious leaks of classified information. The second point is there was no classified information that was on
the
information.
This committee should get that information. Director Patel, my time's about out, and I'm going to use my 12 seconds up the chairman game. Director Patel, has the FBI launched any investigation of this?
Senator, I was just briefed about it late last night, this morning. I don't have an update.
I would like to get an answer by the end of the day.
At this point in the ordinance.
You know what, I'd like to have Tulsi say a few words first, then we could answer a couple of questions, okay? Good. Leave that. That's good.
Mr. President, first and foremost, I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for the trust that you have placed in me to fulfill this critical position as Director of National Intelligence at any time, but specifically during this time. Unfortunately, the American people have very little trust in the intelligence community, largely because they've seen the weaponization and politicization of an entity that is supposed to be purely focused on ensuring our national security. So I look forward to being able to help fulfill that mandate that the American people delivered to you very clearly in this election, to refocus our intelligence community by empowering the great patriots who have chosen to serve our country in this way, and focus on ensuring the safety, security, and freedom of the American people. As you've said, Mr. President, this is what I've dedicated my life to, and it is truly humbling to be in this position, to serve in your administration, help to rebuild that trust, and ultimately to keep the American people safe. Last thing I'll mention, that in your National Prayer Breakfast speech, you made a statement about your legacy of wanting to be remembered as a peacemaker. I know that I can speak for many of my fellow service members who are here today, veterans, Medal of Honor recipients, how deeply that resonates with us. For those who volunteer to put their lives on the line when duty calls, but to have a President and Commander-in-Chief who recognizes the cost of that sacrifice and ensuring that war is the last resort, not the first. So thank you for your leadership on behalf of my friends here and all who wear the uniform. We're grateful. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you. When and where do you plan on meeting?
Loved ones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So many people here and throughout the halls of Congress have been very kind and expressing their condolences, and I appreciate you saying this in this setting just now. Lieutenant Colonel Gabbard, you were asked in your questionnaire about your priorities, and you listed Iran and Hamas and Hezbollah and North Korea. You also mentioned Russia. But the only thing you said about Russia in fully explaining why it's a priority is ending the war with Russia. When you talk about Russia, what are your fears or policy priorities beyond ending the war? How do you see Russia as a threat to the United States?
Senator, if confirmed as the Director of National Intelligence, it will be paramount for me to assess where our intelligence gaps may exist so that I can provide the President and all of you with the most accurate full picture of that threat assessment to directly answer your questions. I think that it is a complex environment. Russia remains a strategic competitor. There are a number of concerns that have to do with their nuclear weapons, as well as how the decisions and policies that are being made by this body and by the President will impact our own national security, which is my foremost concern.
I want to make certain that in no way does Russia get a pass in either your mind or your heart, or in any policy recommendation you would make or not make.
Senator, I'm offended by the question because my sole focus, commitment, and responsibility is about our own nation, our own security, and the interests of the American people. In carrying out the responsibilities of the Director of National Intelligence, if confirmed, no country, group, or individual will get a pass in my fulfilling that responsibility of providing that full intelligence picture so that you all can make the best informed policy decisions for the safety, security, and freedom of the American people. You have my commitment to be completely objective, unbiased, and apolitical, and I hope you understand my commitment to our country's interest.
I absolutely do. I You have answered my question in the manner in which I wanted to hear, that you will do this in an objective manner, provide the information necessary, and that Russia, if it's a threat, you will tell us so and tell us the details of that threat.
Yes, Senator.
How would you restructure the national intelligence priority framework to better align with President Trump's national security goals?
Senator, this is a discussion, if confirmed, I look forward to having with the President and his national security advisor, again, based on the threat assessment and based on the President's priorities. He has spoken about a number of different priorities in different parts of the world. I would work with them on that national intelligence priorities framework, which will serve as the foundation for the intelligence elements under ODNI.
Any recommendations that you have in mind to make to President Trump in that regard?
I want to make sure that any recommendations that I make to the President are fully informed. From where I sit now, I don't believe that I can make those recommendations. I take that responsibility seriously and wouldn't want to shortchange him without first doing the due diligence and work to make sure my recommendations are well-founded.
How will you, Lieutenant Colonel, as the DNI, if confirmed, meet the objectivity and political neutrality requirements to ensure that you're telling the White House what they need to hear and not what they want to hear? A follow-up to that is, how will you handle conflicting intelligence reports from the various members of the intelligence community and present a broad intelligence picture to the President?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Senator. I hope that you have confidence in my ability to extract politics from what my role will be as Director of National Intelligence, because it's something I've done for almost 22 years now of wearing the uniform, both serving in the National Guard and the Army Reserve, even while holding political office. There is a brick wall between the two, and I have fulfilled that obligation in uniform, as I will as Director of National Intelligence, if confirmed. I think the President, I know the President values hearing a lot of different views, and I would make sure that in the intelligence community's responsibilities that dissenting views are not only allowed, but encouraged, and where they present themselves, make sure that the President and you as policymakers are aware so that you can make your best informed decision.
Would you agree with me that bias and prejudice, if it exists any place, exists in both sides of an issue, both partisan sides of this place called Washington, D.C., and the goal, the effort that you will make is to make certain that all the information is presented in a nonpartisan, direct, and manner based upon the facts as known?
Yes, Senator, I agree, and you have my commitment. This is essential for the American people and all of you to have faith and trust in the intelligence products that are being delivered.
One of the greatest challenges is knowing who's telling us the truth, and we need a DNI who tells the truth. True?
Yes, I have a long record of speaking truth to power and would continue that commitment if confirmed in this role.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Moran. Senator King.
Gentleman yields. Now recognize Director Gabbard to make a statement on behalf of the intelligence community.
Thank you very much, Chairman Crawford and Ranking Member Himes, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity for us to be here to present the 2025 Annual Threat Assessment. I'm joined here by my colleagues from the CIA, DIA, FBI, and NSA. Our testimony today offers the collective assessment of the 18 U.S. intelligence elements making up the U.S. intelligence community and draws on the intelligence collection and information available to the IC from open source and private sector and the expertise of our analysts. It evaluates what the IC assesses most threatens our people and our nation's ability to live in a peaceful, free, secure, and prosperous society. As you know very well, we face an increasingly complex threat environment that is threatening us here at home and our interests abroad. I'll begin by focusing on what most immediately and directly threatens the United States and the well-being of the American people: the non-state criminal groups and terrorists putting American lives and livelihood at risk. I'll then move on to focus on the key nation states who have the capability to threaten our security and the interests of the United States. Cartels, gangs, and other transnational criminal organizations in our part of the world are engaging in a wide array of illicit activity, from narcotics trafficking to money laundering, to smuggling of illegal immigrants and human trafficking, which endanger the health, welfare, and safety of everyday Americans. Based on our latest reporting available for the year-long period ending October 2024, cartels were largely responsible for the deaths of more than 54,000 American citizens due to synthetic opioids. Mexico-based transnational criminal organizations are the main suppliers of illicit fentanyl to the U.S. market and are quickly adapting to enforcement and regulatory pressures by using multiple sources and methods to procure precursor chemicals and equipment, primarily from China and India, many of which are dual-use chemicals used in legitimate industries. Independent fentanyl producers are also increasingly fragmenting the drug trade in Mexico. The ready availability of precursor chemicals and ease of making illicit fentanyl have enabled independent actors to increase illicit fentanyl production and smuggling operations in Mexico. Cartels are profiting from human trafficking and have likely facilitated more than 2 million illegal immigrants encountered by law enforcement at the U.S. southwest border in 2024 alone, straining our vital resources and putting the American people at risk. Criminal groups drive much of the unrest and lawlessness in the Western Hemisphere. They also engage in extortion, weapons and human smuggling, and other illicit and dangerous revenue-seeking operations, including kidnapping for ransom, forced labor, and sex trafficking. While some of these key drivers of migrants are expected to persist, heightened U.S. border security enforcement and deportations under the Trump administration are proving to serve as a deterrent for migrants seeking to illegally cross our borders. U.S. Border Patrol apprehensions along the southwest border in January 2025 dropped 85% from the same period in 2024. Transnational Islamist extremists such as ISIS and Al-Qaeda and affiliated jihadi groups continue to pursue, enable, or inspire attacks against the United States and our citizens abroad and within the homeland to advance their ultimate objective of establishing a global Islamist caliphate. This includes heightened efforts to spread their ideology to recruit and radicalize individuals in the U.S. and the West. While the New Year's Day attacker in New Orleans had no known direct contact with ISIS terrorists, he was influenced and radicalized by ISIS ideological propaganda, as one example. Al-Qaeda and its affiliates continue to call for attacks against the United States as they conduct attacks overseas. These jihadist groups have shown their ability to adapt and evolve, including using new technology and tactics to spread their ideology and recruit new followers. A range of non-state cyber criminals are also targeting our economic interests, our critical infrastructure, and advanced commercial capability for extortion, other coercive pursuits, and financial gain. These actors are using a variety of tactics, including phishing, ransomware, and denial of service attacks to disrupt our systems and steal sensitive and lucrative information, using available technologies and taking advantage of U.S. cyber vulnerabilities. Ransomware actors last year, for example, attacked the largest payment processor for U.S. healthcare institutions, and another set of criminal actors conducted cyber attacks against U.S. water utilities. Some of these non-state cyber actors also operate as proxies for or emulate similar activities being carried out by major state actors. The IC sees China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea engaging in activities that could challenge U.S. capabilities and interests, especially related to our security and economy. They are in some cases working together in different areas to target U.S. interests and to protect themselves from U.S. sanctions. At this point, the IC assesses that China is our most capable strategic competitor. Under the leadership of Xi Jinping, the People's Republic of China seeks to position itself as a leading power in the world stage, economically, technologically, and militarily. Beijing is driven in part by a belief that Washington is pursuing a broad effort to contain China's rise and undermine CCP rule. China's most serious domestic challenge is probably China's slowing economy and the potential instability that could occur if socioeconomic grievances lead to large-scale unrest. Growing economic tensions with the United States and other countries could also weigh on China's plans for economic growth and domestic job creation. China's military is fielding advanced capabilities, including hypersonic weapons, stealth aircraft, advanced submarines, stronger space and cyber warfare assets, and a larger arsenal of nuclear weapons. While it appears they would like to develop and maintain positive ties with the United States and the Trump administration to advance its own interests and avoid conflict, China is building its military capability in part to gain an advantage in the event of a military conflict with the United States around the issue of China's efforts towards unification with the Republic of China or Taiwan. Beijing is advancing its cyber capabilities for sophisticated operations aimed at stealing sensitive U.S. government and private sector information and pre-positioning additional asymmetric attack options that may be deployed in a conflict. China's cyber activities have been linked to multiple high-profile breaches, including last year's massive compromise of U.S. telecom infrastructure, commonly referred to as Salt Typhoon. Beijing currently dominates global markets and strategically important supply chains, for example, with the mining and processing of several critical minerals. In December, China imposed an export ban to the United States on gallium, germanium, and antimony, all of which are important to the production of semiconductors and our defense technologies. This was in direct response to U.S. export controls on chips designed to broadly limit PRC access to advanced chips and chip-making equipment. China also aims to compete in other critical global industries, including AI, legacy semiconductor chip production, biomanufacturing and genetic sequencing, and medical and pharmaceutical supply production. Russia's nuclear and conventional military capabilities, along with its demonstrated economic and military resilience, make it a formidable competitor. Moscow has more nuclear weapons than any other nation that could inflict catastrophic damage on the United States and the world in the event of a major war that Russian leaders feared put them and their regime at serious risk. In late 2024, Russia announced updates to its public nuclear doctrine, expanding the conditions under which Russia would consider using nuclear weapons. Russia is building a more modern and survivable nuclear force designed to circumvent U.S. missile defense through reliable retaliatory strike potential. It intends to deter the U.S. by holding the U.S. homeland at risk and by having the capabilities to threaten nuclear war in a conflict. Russia's developed advanced cyber capabilities and has attempted to pre-position access to U.S. critical infrastructure for asymmetric options and make it a persistent cyber threat. Russia's cyber activities have been linked to multiple high-profile breaches, including the 2023 hack of Microsoft. Russia is also fielding new capabilities in anti-satellite weapons meant to degrade U.S. and allied space infrastructure. Among Russia's most concerning developments is a new satellite intended to carry a nuclear weapon as an anti-satellite weapon, violating long-standing international law against such activity and putting the U.S. and global economy at risk. Iran continues to seek to expand its influence in the Middle East, despite the degradation to its proxies and defenses during the Gaza conflict. Iran has developed and maintains ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and UAVs, including systems capable of striking U.S. targets and allies in the region. They've shown a willingness to use these weapons, including during a 2020 attack on U.S. forces in Iraq and in attacks against Israel in April and October 2024. Iran's cyber operations and capabilities also present a serious threat to U.S. networks and data. The IC continues to assess that Iran is not building a nuclear weapon, and Supreme Leader Khamenei has not authorized the nuclear weapons program that he suspended in 2003. We continue to monitor closely if Tehran decides to reauthorize its nuclear weapons program. In the past year, we've seen an erosion of a decades-long taboo in Iran on discussing nuclear weapons in public, likely emboldening nuclear weapons advocates within Iran's decision-making apparatus. Iran's enriched uranium stockpile is at its highest levels and is unprecedented for a state without nuclear weapons. Iran will likely continue efforts to counter Israel and press for a U.S. military withdrawal from the region by aiding, arming, and helping to reconstitute its loose consortium of like-minded terrorist actors, which it refers to as its axis of resistance. Although weakened, this collection of actors still presents a wide range of threats, including to Israel's population and U.S. forces deployed in Iraq and Syria, as well as U.S. and international military and commercial shipping and transit. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un is pursuing stronger strategic and conventional capabilities that can target U.S. forces and allies in the region, as well as the U.S. homeland, to bolster North Korea's leverage and stature, defend its regime, and achieve at least tacit recognition as a nuclear weapons power. Kim's recently cemented strategic partnership with Russia supports these goals by providing him with greater financial, military, and diplomatic support, reducing its reliance on China, and providing North Korean forces and weapons systems with warfighting experience. Kim views his strategic weapons advances, its deepening ties with Russia, and its economic durability as strengthening his negotiating position against Washington's demands for denuclearization and lessening Kim's need for sanctions relief. Since 2022, China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea have grown closer. Removing the accelerant of the war in Ukraine is unlikely to revert these bilateral relationships to a pre-war 2021 baseline, leaving room for new strategic priorities and world events to create new incentives or challenges to their expanded cooperation. Russia has been a catalyst for much of this expansion, driven heavily by the support it has needed for its war against Ukraine, including protection from U.S. and Western sanctions. In addition to exchange of military and other resource capabilities with North Korea, Russia has relied more heavily on China's financial and defense industry backing and has increased combined military exercises with China. With Iran, Russia has also expanded financial ties to mitigate sanctions. Iran has become a critical military supplier to Russia, especially of UAVs, in exchange for Russian technical support for Iranian weapons, intelligence, and advanced cyber capabilities. The threats that we see to the U.S. to U.S. national security are both complex and multifaceted. In closing, I want to address briefly the Signal Chat issue that I know many of you are concerned about. The President and National Security Advisor Waltz held a press conference yesterday with a clear message. It was a mistake that a reporter was inadvertently added to a Signal Chat with high-level national security principals having a policy discussion about imminent strikes against the Houthis and the effects of the strike. National Security Advisor has taken full responsibility for this, and the National Security Council is conducting an in-depth review along with technical experts working to determine how this reporter was inadvertently added to this chat. The conversation was candid and sensitive, but as the President and National Security Advisor stated, no classified information was shared. There were no sources, methods, locations, or war plans that were shared. This was a standard update to the National Security Cabinet that was provided alongside updates that were given to foreign partners in the region. The Signal Message app comes pre-installed on government devices. In December of 2024, CISA stated, quote, "We strongly urge highly targeted individuals to immediately review and apply best practices provided in the guidance to protect mobile communications, including consistent use of end-to-end encryption." And they named Signal as an app as an example of such an end-to-end encrypted messaging app. Ideally, these conversations occur in person. However, at times, fast-moving coordination of an unclassified nature is necessary where in-person conversation is not an option. I'm also aware that a lawsuit was filed yesterday on this issue. As a result of that pending litigation, I'm limited in my ability to comment further on that specific case. My Office of General Counsel will be in close contact with the Department of Justice on this matter. The most important thing to the American people and to all of us is the success of this military operation against terrorists who have been and continue to attack American service members was extremely successful, thanks to the leadership of President Trump and the actions of our brave men and women in uniform. As the heads of the American people's intelligence community, we will continue to provide the President, you in Congress, and our warfighters with timely, unbiased, relevant intelligence to keep our country secure, free, prosperous, and at peace. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Prior to her inauguration, to again sow discord and chaos in America.
And if I may,
on Jeffrey Epstein, can you rule out that he was connected in some way to any kind of intelligence, either foreign or domestic?
I haven't seen any evidence or information that reflects that. If anything comes before me that changes that in any way, support the president's statement loud and clear. If any credible evidence comes forward, he wants the American people to see it.
Great. Director Gabbard, we thank you for
Thank
your
you.
time today. I know you're a busy woman,
Thank
so
you.
we'll let you get out of here, but thank you so much. Okay. I know there's many issues going on today across the world and here at home. If you have any other further questions, I'm happy to take them. Ed, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah,